Welcome to Recovery Report Live. I'm Dan Odess, CEO of GlobalPro. Happy to be with you here this Thursday morning, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. That's when we go live to talk about all important issues regarding insurance and real estate and business. Now, if you want to know what's going on in this storm season, make sure that you're checking us out at globalpro.com/storm center. There's a lot of information. We take all the drama out of it. We make sure that you, as business owners or community association managers or board members, know what you need to know as it relates to these storms. These storms kicked up early this season. We obviously talked about Hurricane Beryl in our last episode, and here we are talking about yet another storm, Hurricane Debby. Hurricane Debby was a storm that kind of really was late in development stages, but hung around long enough to cause billions of dollars in damages, primarily in both Florida as well as in Georgia. And I want to break it down by the numbers and talk about the issues that are going on, because as we have told you so many times, time and time again, about the legislation and what's going on and some of the convoluted things that have come out of it and the representations made by many that are special interests in helping insurance companies be more profitable, make more profit at your cost as business owners or community associations, despite the billions and if not trillions as an industry that they report in profits every single year, despite all the disaster and damages that occur. They are pretty good at protecting these things and as well as lobbying for their own interests. And those interests right now, particularly in the state of Florida, in my opinion, do not align with U.S. policyholders. Why? Because they are only protecting the profits of these insurance companies, not your rights as a consumer. There's many things and many examples of those issues. So if you're making a claim, again, take your time. Check us out online. Go to globalpro.com. Check the resource section. There's a lot of things there. You want advice. You want to give us, you want to run something by us. You want some feedback from insurance claims experts. Let us know. Call us, 855-487-7475. Again, we are so easy to get a hold of. You can go on our Instagram and DM us. You can go on YouTube. Leave us a comment down below in this video or others. Ask us a question, and we will give you advice and information you could use, because that's what this is all about. So let's talk about Hurricane Debby. Now, Hurricane Debby, again, late developing storm. It was in the Gulf of Mexico, moved up the coastline, had big bands all to the right of the storm, as well as to the north of it. So east to north, lots of different weather that was going on there. So it's important to understand that this wasn't a Hurricane Ian or one of these other types of storms that was just came with a tremendous punch from like a hurricane, from like a category 3, maybe even a category 5. So very, very different here. Right, so let's talk about estimated damages. They're estimating about $10 billion in damages. Now, these are early indications as to where they believe the economic losses are going to be, but the reality of it is that they don't know. We see these things change all the time. We see the categories change all the time. If you tuned into our last episode with Rob, you will have seen us talk about this very issue. This issue is obviously really, it's tantamount to the difficulties in understanding how these things actually happen. And so we want to make sure that, again, you get a full understanding of what is actually happening here and how you should be making these claims. So we have got $10 billion in damages, lots of damage to agricultural. I pulled some of these facts up in your information, so I'm going to kind of run through them quickly and get to, maybe a finer point, some information you can actually use as a business owner or community association, right? So residential property claims, about 450,000, they believe, will be made or has been made. About 4 billion in damages there. Commercial property, 200,000 claims, about 3 billion. Of that, you've seen about 150,000 of these claims, about $2 billion in flood losses. Now, again, these are all approximate values, approximate number of claims, estimated dollar values. They put all kinds of constructs around these things. They don't know yet. It's too early to tell. Auto damage. A lot of claims here. Why? Because you had a tremendous amount of flooding. This was a big flood storm, more so than it was, I would say, the wind. But there was still category 1 wind. So categorically, definitely strong enough to cause damage to structures and buildings, to damage your business. Certainly, you had power outages and other things that occurred during the time. And I'm sure you, as a business owner, community association, felt the impacts if you were in those storm areas. So keep in mind, Total combined value 10 billion. So how do we break this down for Florida, right? So for Florida, they're estimating about 7 billion of that 10 is in Florida, where the other 3 billion is in the Georgia area. So something also to keep in mind, you have agricultural losses, residential losses in Florida, estimated about 3 billion, and your commercial property about 2 billion, with your flood damage being about 1 billion. So a lot of this is focused on the Florida area more so than I'd say anywhere else in the country. But what's important here is to understand some early tactics of these insurance companies when dealing with these claim issues, right? So you have slow claims processing, low initial offers, right? Because you're struggling, you're trying to get your business up. These are the tactics that we see often. Now, the CFO for the state of Florida signed some emergency orders. Controversially, or trade organizations are looking at these things closely. And it's funny is that they attack the early part of the claims process. They attack it in a way that it makes it near impossible for you to get the information you need from experts that are in this field representing only the interest of insurance companies. They want to give the insurance company every possible opportunity to do whatever it is, but we all understand the strains on their staff as well as the experience of those staffs, quite frankly, hasn't bode well. And if we look at storms like Hurricane Ian and you look at the fraud allegations that are well documented, you look at the delayed Texas that went on there, as well as the early reports out of Texas from the recent storm that damaged billions of dollars worth of infrastructure and buildings there. The early on indication was there was a lot of feet dragging. I can only imagine what it's like in Florida, where there's just a hell of a lot more protections for insurance companies these days, and less focus on the needs of the consumers. So we have denial of coverage. We're seeing a lot of reservation of rights letters that are coming out that are just packed full of policy conditions and information that is totally unrelated to a hurricane type loss or even a flood claim that you might have exist. Understand the intricacies of a flood loss. These adjusters are overwhelmed with claims. Living out of trailers or cars, we often find, and that's not being facetious, it's an actual thing. So again, your performance is sometimes reflection of your comfort. And I sometimes see that these guys are tired, they're exhausted, they're moving around the country, they're living in not the most ideal conditions. But again, we need to work with them to get them the information because they're working in a very tight construct with the federal government program. So really important that you understand that they are running from claim to claim. There may not be power for days. They may not have access to certain amenities that you otherwise would be. But again, this is category 1, so don't want to be an alarmist and certainly don't want to be dramatic about it. But keep an eye on these things and understand that you're one of many that are dealing with this, even for a storm of this size that caused these types of damages. So we're seeing early on disputes, partial payments. Insurance companies oftentimes resort to partial payment processing to kind of keep you on your heels, to allow them the time to actually do what they're required to do in a prescribed amount of time to drag that process out. So, really honestly understand where that is. And a big thing that we see, particularly in Florida, pre-existing condition issues. Insurance companies blaming large issues, large swaths of issues, damages that you may have to your property on some sort of pre-existing issue, or they go into this record requesting mode where they won't do anything until you've provided them all the information from all your prior storm claims or any other type of records or issues that you might have before they process one thing for you, whether it's ALE or your contents losses or even your building damages. Interestingly enough, in the underwriting process, did they ask for that information? Ask yourself that. Look at your applications. Ask your insurance agent about that. But again, as you've heard in prior broadcasts, when you're thinking about insurance agents and their role, understand that they're not there to represent your interest in a claim, just like the insurance company representative, the adjusters, or their experts do not represent your interest. So if you're a community association and you have a fiduciary obligation to unit owners and to the association itself, if you don't have an expert representing you in your claims process, how are you protecting your fiduciary obligations to the association? And relying on your broker when I'm telling you right now, they're legally not there to adjust your claim. They don't hold a license to do it. Oftentimes, they've never even handled a claim in the field or will even visit your property after a major loss like this. So simply sitting back and hoping the insurance company does the right thing is not protecting the interests of your fellow unit owners. So make sure that you have an expert on your side, like GlobalPro. We're here to help you. As I mentioned, there's so many resources at your disposal. Go to globalpro.com, call us 855-487-7475. You'll find out more information like this and so many other intricate details of the claims process that's so important early on in the claim. And that's what we're talking about. Right now is early, super early. It's really important how you report the claim, what information you provide, what documentation, what your contractor writes in their reports, what your policy says relative to current case law, common law, and how the information in expert reports and contractor reports and your own emails is going to be interpreted today or in the future. You got to prepare for the worst because, quite frankly, as we've seen with past storms, insurance companies engage in these types of tactics, which resorts to elevated amount of litigation. It's not the other way around. I know the legislature worked really hard to convince you that it's public adjusters, contractors, and lawyers pushing for litigation. Believe me, we don't get paid more if this goes to litigation. We get paid to make sure that you'll get paid today rather than tomorrow. We get paid to help you through the process. But ultimately, insurance company may make a decision, a business decision, not to pay your claim. And then we need to move the case into litigation. It is what it is. And we want to continue to advocate for you and help you through that process. But again, if you're a community association board member and you don't have an expert on your side, think about your obligations. If you had a construction project, you probably will hire an owner's rep or at least a licensed general contractor to oversee the project, correct? I'm sure it is. Like when you're filing your taxes or when you have to deal with a legal issue, hire a lawyer, hire a licensed accountant. It's the same thing here. Just because someone sold you a product or insurance doesn't mean they have a license to help you adjust a claim. But we do. We've been doing this for over a decade. We've managed more than $1 billion in loss and damage, and we've helped hundreds of thousands of policyholders place insurance throughout the country. So contact us, let us know what we can do. Check us out online. Obviously, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, like us, follow us on all the social media platforms. And I want to thank you all for tuning in this morning, joining me, Dan Odess, CEO of GlobalPro. And I wish you the best luck if you've been damaged in dealing with this stuff. But we hope that you think of us first and call us first when you need representation in dealing with claims. So until next time, thank you all for tuning in. We'll see you next week, same place, same time, right here, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time on the Recovered Report Live.